Almost time. I declare that we will now start the second session. Will the stewards please invite the deputations to come in?
I can't see you. 咁我代表小組委員會歡迎各團體代表同埋公眾人士出席今次。
I'd like to welcome all the deputations to our meeting today to discuss the issue of government's policy regarding, bazaars in the Chinese New Year. If you require interpretation, please tune in to the appropriate channel. You'll find details, on the tables. I'll now invite the deputations to speak. Each of you will have 3 minutes. As it is usual practice that unless you indicate that your submissions cannot be disclosed, otherwise your submissions will be uploaded to the LegCo's website and circulated to LegCo members. If you've not sent in your written submissions or supplementary views, please do so as soon as possible after the meeting. All deputations and member public attending the discussion today, please remember that your views expressed will not be protected by the Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Deputations and individuals should also refer to the notes to members of the public attending LegCo meetings in respect of various security measures. And the notice is also attached to the circular which the Secretariat has sent to you earlier. And those in the public gallery may also ask obtain a copy of notice from our security staff. So we'll start with Ms. Hon Kin Lam. We are here to attend the public hearing. Many present here are actually organizers who had actually helped organize bazaars, and they now have the opportunity to express our views to LegCo members, and this is really a very valuable opportunity. I hope the Assistant Secretary will not just sit here today. You should also tell the Secretary, Mr. Ko, and relay to him our views and really come up with a proper policy on bazaars. In a previous discussion, we arrived at a conclusion that and agreed that bazaar is one of the means to develop a local economy. But route number 6 of KMB is called the shopping route. And we also have the Temple Street Nighttime Bazaar. But if you want to promote a local bazaar culture, you shouldn't just designate a bus route and call it a shopping route, because we have many local bazaars with local characteristics, especially during the festivals. We have many hawkers hawking and selling cooked food stores. So long as you do not, indiscriminately take enforcement action, then the local, bazaar culture will still be there. So Dr. Cole should really, come to the district and listen to the proponents of local bazaars and see how we can come up with appropriate measures to promote local bazaars and to set up venues for people to prepare cooked food products, and also explore how we can come up with an ordinance and also issue new hawker licenses so the hawkers can really operate with dignity and conduct their business legitimately. This is how we can develop a genuinely local culture. So the bazaars are already in existence, so please take note of the views of the community. The point is whether or not the government is willing to really come up with a good bazaar policy. All we lack now is a proper set of policies. So please be in tune with public aspirations, and please come up with the arrangements so that the people who have the chance to hawk legitimately. Next, Mr. Lee Chairman. In the North District, at the end of 2013, we already used our resources and conducted many pilot trials in the Lin Wo Hui and Sun Hung Street. And other than the rainy season, we would normally organize a bazaar once every month, although we have very limited resources. In the process, when we apply for licenses, we hope that you will consider how you can, cut the red tape so that everything could be done more expeditiously. We understand and we have observed that hawking, I think you need the different departments to coordinate before we have a proper hawker policy. So I hope whether the officials can help us to come up with a one-stop application process so that we don't need to go through different hurdles.
The
Bureau and the government consider this a tourism thing, but this is, of course, not unreasonable. But at first, to start with, bazaars are set up to allow people to make a living. It's not a tourism attraction. And there are people, grassroots people, who really depends on this for a living. And to some extent, it can alleviate the demand on social welfare. I hope consideration will be given to allow people to make a living. And there are people selling things during holidays and festivals. It's better that it's well organized than allowing people to do it without any organization. I think we should go for cooperation. Next, Mr. Ho Chi-chung. Last year, at Portland Street, New York, we had an incident. Looking back, I would say that they were made by the government. They adopted a strong-handed approach. They allow Kwai Lam Street to do it, but not Portland Street. And things deteriorated as a result. Bazaars and hawkers have been given bad names, illegal hawking, food safety, and so on. But all these are technical problems that can be overcome. I don't know whether the Bureau is aware of the UN Convention, ICSCR, Everyone is entitled to economic well-being, and people should be allowed to make a living. You know, some famous brands such as 4C fishboard and One Chai dumpling all started as street hawkers. If you do not, it's unreasonable not to allow people to sell things on the street. And now there are food trucks, there are food streets which will be operated by consortium. You would be stifling the development of bazaars run by ordinary people. And please don't badmouth hawkers or cooked food hawkers. They are one of the economic engines of our community, and they are also good at building social capital. I have worked with another concerned group on CSSA, and we wanted to operate a cooked food bazaar, but different departments put up obstacles. For example, we have to accommodate the district council meeting schedule. We have to get signatures from all sorts of engineers and technical people, and then we can get a license. But is it true that once licensed, we will not have any food incidents? If you look at the recent food incidents as exposed by the CFS, well, all these shops are licensed. Next, Ms. Cho Xing. Good morning to members. When did you last have egg waffles or barbecue food on the street? Well, they are disappearing. In the 80s and 90s, there were different hawkers, different stores. Hygienic conditions were fine. But for some reason, now no more hawker license is issued. According to the government, it's because we need to make sure that food is safe, or we need to be mindful of social environmental hygiene. But the parallel goods traders in Xiangshui are creating the same problem, but you're not doing anything to stop them. When we have no more hawker, no more on-street grilled food or egg waffles, then our memory will be taken away. Why are we stifling the development of bazaars? Why do we have to erase our collective memory? Well, we don't want to have hawkers only during holidays and festivals. We have to get a licensing system so that people will be able to be self-reliant if they want to make a living out of it. Mr. Jiang Yao Sing from Mong Kok, people love night markets. I'm from Mong Kok. It seems that we are making a petition to Dr. Going Man. I'm a Mong Kok person. I, as expected, Dr. Going Man would not see us today. When the officials go to Mong Kok, what's the thing you see most? Well, goldsmith shops, jewelry shops, and telecommunication shops. They are all over Mongkok. It was said that during the New Year, if cooked food stores, cooked food hawkers go to Mongkok, they will be rounded up and arrested by FEHD people. I think we see a lot of tourists. But during the New Year, when we have cooked food hawkers, the people on the street will mostly be local residents, local people. So we very much like to have this during the New Year. And then the district council was presented with a Maffason proposal. It would be void of any local characteristic. You have to bid for a license. You're not supposed to use open frame. Many local food will not be made available in this bazaar, even if it's approved. So now that the proposal has been voted down by the district council, and I don't have any regret about that. And now we still have no viable alternative at this stage. They have been talking about the need to have a safety margin. And even during the first 3 days of the Lunar New Year, the FEHD say that there's a need to maintain safety, as therefore we have cooked food hawkers carrying their wares around with hot cooking oil. That's why we are unsafe. The DAB, sorry, maybe we should not talk about it anymore. Even MK people would like to vent their anger. I hope the Bureau would listen to us. Next, Mr. Lam Chung Hei. Madam Chair, now I would say having bazaars is a piece of good news to grassroots people, but FEHD is unwilling to accommodate what we need. Just like the midnight bazaars, they will send people to drive away hawkers a few times in the night. So business cannot be conducted, people cannot make a living, and now rent is high and prices are rising. Grassroots people and some people cannot buy affordable goods. We like the FHD to be more relaxed. We're not just asking for licenses to be issued. There should be some allowance given for bazaars at night or even during daytime. They should be allowed to operate. I hope the FHD would heed the voice of grassroots people. Next, Mrs. Chen Wong Lei Lei. Madam Chair, the other deputations have already said this. Bazaars are important for local communities. We hope these people's voice can be heard, and I hope the government can offer us assistance. I want to talk about Chinese New Year fair or Chinese New Year bazaar. We hope during the first 3 days of Chinese New Year we'll be allowed to operate. The shops will be closed for the holiday, so it's the right time for us to make a living. We're not there to make huge profits. It's just a means to make a living. I hope you will not send people to disperse us during the 3 days. And I hope the government will come up with a clear policy on bazaars so as to promote bazaar development. This will help us make a living. And my third point that the third point I want to make is that we should have space allocated. We cannot afford to rent a shop costing $100,000 or more. So we hope some vacant space can be made available for us.
係咪睇講政府如果係真係撥咗呢啲地方俾你用
And even if a space is made available, we cannot afford to spend a lot on renovation. If we can't manage to spend millions on renovation to get a bazaar up and running, so I hope the government can help us. Next, Madam Zhong Kam-ying. Oh no, Mr. Ho Cho-hon. Good morning. I support bazaars. Bazaars are a good starting point to make Hong Kong prosperous. It's also a good place to visit. It can lead to stability, and bazaars will be welcomed by tourists. The government should have an open mind about this. They should bear in mind the well-being of our people. They should be allowed to make a living in well-chosen locations. We are very concerned that the idea will not be implemented. There are many uncertainties, and there are many constraints for organizers. And sometimes the site is so remote that it's difficult to do business. And if no one goes there, the operators will not be able to continue with the business. We should be given licenses. And I've been a hawker for decades. I want to say much more. So far, no one has come out to defend hawkers. Hawkers are regarded as sinners and monstrous people. This is well, we have to interact with other people. As Dr. Sun Yat-sen has said, it's we for everyone and everyone for us. And we should allow this to promote prosperity. The government has been saying that it wants to improve people's livelihood, but hawkers are arrested and heavily fined. So how can the government justify its action? It's a question of proportionality in monitoring and control. The government should properly manage hawking. Hawkers should be given licenses. They should be given a chance to make a decent living. Next, Mr. Chen Chiu Hung from a joint development platform for hawkers. My platform is concerned about cooked food hawkers situation. I was listening to the first session of discussion. It said that in the North District there were proposals approved by the District Council. My organization also assisted in the North District Bazaar. Well, it was something about a gesture, really. It was approved, but no support was given. When we asked for a venue, there were a sort of restrictions, and when there's a change of personnel in FHD, this newcomer denied that it was agreeable. So we couldn't see what the government had done to help us. As for the Chinese New Year Bazaar, the government is so timid, and it doesn't want to allow cooked food with open flame. In the past, there were cooked food stores, and there were itinerary hawkers allowing food to be sold with cooked with open flame. I dug out some old newspaper. In the past, some food items were allowed to be sold by the cooked food store, and at that time they were described as harmless food, and now it's regarded as dangerous as the atomic bombs.
And also, in fact, if you go online, you can find a document stating that certain food trucks will be allowed to use open flame for cooking. It's allowed by the Fire Services Department. I don't know why we don't have room for that now. It's been there for decades, and now why is it that everything has changed now? Finally, I hope the government would consider expanding the so-called cooked food zone to the whole of the territory, because there are only 40 stalls in Mong Kok. Is a very small area, but in Quayling Street at least there are 50-60 stalls. If you only have 40 stalls, it would be it won't be sufficient. And what about hawkers in Shamshui and other areas? Ms. Wong talked about the relaxed enforcement approach. I want to know how relaxed she means, because according to the hawkers I know, recently the department has actually stepped up its enforcement effort. Next, Ms. Yip Ho Lam. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question for the two government officials. We already have a lot of cooked food bazaars, but different approaches of enforcement are taken. For example, we have the Qingyi Bazaar. They have a temporary license. Originally, they're supposed to reheat food only, but we see all sorts of barbecue food and other cooking methods. So why is it that this is tolerated in Qingyi? And as mentioned by the other deputation, at present the fire services regulations allow the use of LPG cylinders for stir-frying chestnuts, etc. But why is it that for cooked food bazaars only electric appliances can be used for reheating food? Well, for Wine and Dine Festival and also the festival, food festival organized by Alan Zeman, they have electronic coupons for you to purchase in advance. So they use high-tech for transaction, and then they are tolerated. What about hawkers for grassroots? You arrest hawkers immediately. Why is it that you allow these carnivals and dining festivals for the rich, but not bazaars for the poor? Well, Deputy Secretary mentioned the paper in which the Secretary mentioned that we have Tai Pai Tong licenses and other licenses. Is Dr. Ko going to honor his promise about the issuance of more Tai Pai Tong licenses? And also fixed pitch hawker store license scheme were close to the end of the 5-year period. Can you give us some figures? Third point, you talked about procedures just now. But the answers are vague. If an organizer would like to make an application, which department should be responsible for the application and for coordinating among other departments? Please tell us step 1 and step 2, etc., what we should do. Tell us step by step how to make an application, how we should deal with the district council, etc. Fourth point, please tell us your enforcement criteria, especially during Chinese New Year in Kwai Lin Street near Langham Place in Mongkok, for example. What are the criteria? Another point, seamless transition is not possible after the Lunar New Year fair. So please tell us if it's not seamless, whether at least some kind of transition is possible. Thank you. Next, Ms. Yun Ching. Good afternoon. I'm from the Seoul Oak Concern Group. Well, for Yahoo News, the top 10 news in 2016, number 10 relates to the Mongkok riot. That night, the police and FEHD refused itinerant and licensed hawkers to do their business in Mongkok, and international media called it the Fishball Revolution. In a 2016 policy address, the chief executive mentioned that the government would like to encourage the underprivileged group to gain employment and be self-reliant. And I've seen the underprivileged groups and community organizations promoting the setting up of bazaars to encourage self-reliance through various means, urging or begging the government to allow them to operate there. We had in the closing ceremony of the second Bazaar Festival in Cheta Garden, I witnessed a mother with 2 children. She is a single mother, and she just laid the items on the ground, inviting people to buy her commodities. She only earned several dozen dollars a day, and her younger daughter was holding the first $20 note that her mother made, and her smile was so satisfying. What the underprivileged group need is the opportunity for them to give play to their skills, to their creativity, so that they can be self-reliant. The government should allow them to operate legally, so that we can have Lion Rock spirit, so that we can have synergy, so that we can offer cheaper goods for the poor, so that we can help young people start their business, so that we can promote a community market with local characteristics, promote local tourism. We have a dream. We hoped that the enforcement officers would allow members of the public to joyfully enjoy their fishball skewers during the Chinese New Year holiday. I hope that the government can develop bazaars, because fishballs is equivalent to revitalization of Hong Kong. I seem to be hearing a voice saying, please give us a way out. Thank you, monsieur. I just received 2 motions from 2 members. Towards the end of the meeting, I will deal with the motions. Next, Mr. Ho Kin Wing. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am an ordinary customer. I think that for a bazaar to operate successfully, we need to make it special. We need to find a convenient location with a diversity of products, and the products sold at the bazaar should be unique. But cooked food vendors are restricted to using electric appliances to reheat food only. I think it's ridiculous. Does it mean that all 40 cooked food stores would be selling the same kind of good food like fish balls and siu mai? We say we have the flower market. It's kind of remote, but it has its own characteristics. Whereas for other customers, what is the point of going to somewhere really remote to buy a skewer of fish balls if he can get one in Mongkok? Without publicity, you can't attract patrons. You need to have a diversity of food on offer. And in the past, in Mongkok, we had steamed rice rolls and also roasted squid with charcoal. Well, I suppose with the requirements, we are not going to see these items in the bazaar. So in the end, there won't be any characteristics. There will only be steamed dim sums. And the bazaars will be set up at remote locations, so you won't attract patrons. Food would be poached, and there is no variety. It's meaningless. I hope that the government can relax its requirement in the future. I hope you can listen to the voice of the public and allow open flame cooking. It is only common. We have cafe de coral, we have firewood, we have charcoal pots on tables, and it's nothing dangerous. Thank you. Mr. Wong Hiu Ngao. Madam Chair, good afternoon. I'm speaking to criticize the government officials who have been dragging on the feet in approving and developing a bazaar policy. Well, when it comes to policy, there should be as few requirements as possible so as to facilitate use by the public. Well, we have this document on bazaar policy in Shangwan. We used to have a big bazaar. It was very popular. And now in Jordan Temple Street, we have a night market, and it will rely on the self-restraint of vendors, and it's very welcomed by tourists. It's not like arranging for a picnic for primary students. You can have crowd control, single file crowd control, but this is ridiculous. If you implement this kind of crowd control, it will be just like the 1st of July rally. So the government officials should really rethink. And also, this is absolutely ridiculous. What is the hourly rent for hiring a playground? The government charges high rent and use the money to build the third runway and also the East Landhouse Metropolis. And the government just squanders money away and signed all sorts of agreements. Are we going to operate as franchises as instead? Are we going to impose requirements on the hardness of fish balls, length, taste, etc.? Maybe you should go for IPO instead. Delay no more. You don't think with your head. On open flame cooking, noise control, again, this is so frigging ridiculous. This is not Wuhan Village. You can only operate till 2 a.m. and it should be tolerated. The government is really out of touch with reality. We need to have bazaar policy, but there should be as few requirements as possible. It's just like bazaars operated by communities in Taiwan. In the long term, you can set up something like a bazaar organization or association in Taiwan to resolve the issues of environmental hygiene and public safety. If you take a heavy-handed approach to restrict the development of bazaars and arrest hawkers, it won't do. It depends on the civic mindedness of our people, and it needs time to build up to develop bazaars. Well, thank you. Thank you. Time is almost up. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wong. I would like to remind speakers to mind their language. You have used euphemisms, but please be more civilized. Next, Ms. Zhang. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, government officials. Right. First of all, I need to thank the Kun, Guan, Hong and Mei Yi for setting up the Tin Kwang market. They are these nice-looking young people made so much effort in helping us set up the Tin Kwang Bazaar. We'll never forget them. We stay united. We're going to make it work. We just want the government to give us space. We just want to make a living. I'm 65 years old now. I'm a senior citizen. I can't get any job, and I don't want to rely on public assistance. I want to be self-reliant. I want to make a living on my own. I just hope the government can relax its approach, if possible. You should issue licenses, as many as possible, in fact. Please help us. We're really hardworking. We just want to make ends meet. We don't want to rely on the government. Together with my husband, we are 130 years old. And we just want to create our own future. We hope that the government can provide space and approve the applications expeditiously to set up bazaars. Don't waste space. And I want to criticize the government. And what is happening this year? The government is incompetent. Why did something like that happen on the first day of the Chinese New Year, leading to people getting injured? It's the first 3 years. It's the first 3 days of the Chinese New Year. You're supposed to let people do business, and it's the fault of the CY Leung administration causing so much trouble. Thank you, Ms. Zhang. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Zhang, for reflecting the needs of grassroots and senior citizens, and it is important that their voice be heard. Next, Mr. Wang Homing. Thank you, Madam Chair. Earlier, when CY Leung was bickering with John Zhang, he said that there would be no heavy-handed approach to crack down on illegal parking during holidays. So that should be the government policy. Because it's a holiday, the government should not take a hardline approach on offenders. So, about the enforcement action taken by FEHD, is it because they did not obey CY Leung's instruction? In fact, hawker in a case jumped into a river and got drowned because he was chased by FEHD officers.
10 years later, in 2016, we had the riot in Mongkok. Again, it involved the hawkers, and it resulted in a major riot. Of course, there are different reasons why we had the riot, but we understand that the crucial factor was the hawkers. The hawkers, because they cannot afford the expensive rents, and they cannot afford to lease premises in the shopping malls owned by the link, and therefore they are forced to hawk on the street. I myself, and when I was young, I also, had hawk on the street together with my parents, and so was Mr. Leung Kwok-hong. During the Chinese New Year, in the Chinese New Year Bazaar, I think the venue should be, I think decided by the organizations who would propose the venues to the government. If there were to be fires and explosions, the DAB, for example, had organized, for example, hot pot dinners, and people also roasting chestnuts using open flame. So you're not being fair to those hawkers who are using open flame. The so-called district-led approach simply means DAB-led. We all know that the DAB monopolizes the district councils. I'm against the whole hawker bazaar, policy to be spearheaded by the DAB. I think the government should set up district hawker or bazaar committee so that the hawkers and the FHD and the district council could all, join this platform. So my question is whether or not you are willing to consider setting up a bazaar committee at the district level and allow all the stakeholders to discuss the issue. And secondly, for the forthcoming Chinese New Year, and it's not just going to be at the venues allowed by the FEC. Will you take, stringent enforcement action, or are you going to adopt a lenient approach. It's not just other countries. In the Thai Day in the past, we also allow open flame cooking. So together with the two other motions, we have received one more motion proposed by another member. So altogether, we have 3 motions which we will deal with towards the end of the meeting. The next to speak is Mr. Chen Man-wei. Thank you. I read the 2 papers on the government's policy on bazaars in both 2015 and 2016. Actually, the government's policies are very unreasonable. First of all, the government said that if the bazaar policies may not be fair to the proprietors of shopping premises, and of course you must point out that many of these shop operators are SMEs. The government said that what is most unfair would be the expensive rents in the market. If the government has an appropriate policy for hawkers, instead of just assembling them in all the cooked food centers and say the problem is resolved. The government also said that because people's shopping habits have changed, and therefore asked whether or not they are really, hawkers are really as popular as before. But I think the biggest reason for people's shopping habit to change is because of your urban planning, so that when people shop, they are forced to go to shopping malls. They don't have the chance to shop on the street side. For example, when we have a bazaar festival, many people would go to the bazaars and buy things that they would not be able to buy in typical shopping malls. So this really, what really changed the people's shopping habit is the government, and what they did was very unreasonable. In the government's paper dated 2015, the government's position is very clear. The government doesn't want to come up with a hawker policy. They just want to find a place to simply resettle the hawkers, such as the cooked food centers. So all these allegations, I think the government's understanding of the hawkers' position is very unreasonable. The government's paper in 2016 said that it has an open mind and they would accept a district-led approach. And maybe we say by district-led you mean the DAB-led approach. You said the government is prepared to assist any organization to operate bazaars so long as there is support in the community. But then the government, I think both papers by the administration doesn't give me the impression that they really are adopting a people-focused approach. Your policy is so cold-blooded. I'm reminded of a story of some hawkers. For example, when the FEC staff try to go after them, they have to escape. But you just remember these hawkers are not typically old people at the age of 60. They can no longer work on construction sites. So I hope the government can come up with a better hawker policy. We need to deal with 3 motions by members, and 4 members have put up their hands indicating that they would like to speak. So may I now ask the administration to be brief. You don't need to repeat what you've already said in the earlier session. Just tell us whether there is a consistent policy, whether there's a timetable, whether you can have a platform for one-stop, application procedure. Thank you. During the last session, we heard about the some people experience, and just now 2 deputations shared with us the experience in the North District. Actually, I've been to Santong Street and the Shakwu Agricultural Produce Distribution Center. I understand the deputations have worked very hard. On 9th September 2016, the North District Council's Subcommittee has agreed with the hawker proposal. So with the consent of the district council, what has the government done? The government has really indeed, worked with the district council, and through the effort of the government, the problem is resolved. FXG and the lands department have already allow the operation of bazaars, and if there's any application by organization, they will not be obstructed. Some deputations also said that on March the 2nd, when the Hawker Policy Subcommittee put forward some proposals, and what is the latest progress? I've already explained just now that regarding the fixed pitch hawker license, I've already said that we're now monitoring the implementation of that policy and how many vacant stores there are. Depending on the pitches in different locations, public safety, views of the resident district council, we will then map out a way forward. On reissuing Tai Pai Dong licenses, we have said that we have an open mind, and we are prepared to consider to try out on a pilot basis such proposals, and I shan't repeat the details, so long as we have the support of the district council and if it is technically feasible. And for public markets which are not well patronized, we can consider setting up off-street cooked food centers, and these are proposals which we have an open mind and are prepared to consider. Regarding licenses for craftsmen, in 2016 the FXC already approached the district councils for a craftsman with local characteristics, including cobblers and so on. We have approached the district councils, and there have been cases where we have issued licenses once we have the support of the district councils. On enforcement, the term we use is that we would be tolerant. We have said that if they only sell dry goods and don't obstruct the passageway, then we would only issue verbal warnings and we will only disperse them. But if they are selling cooked food, I shan't repeat what I've said already. We will, because of the concern for public safety and environmental hygiene, depending on the circumstances, we will consider taking enforcement action. On the use of open flame, I've said that we encourage them to resort to using electric power. As to whether they can use other ways of cooking, it would depend on the location concerned and the details of the specific proposals. So far we have an open mind, but they will need to come up with specific proposals which satisfy our requirements. The chair mentioned, and we also explained, that we accept a bottom-up approach and a district-led approach. And finally, on the question of Dai Dat Day, I don't think we can make a direct comparison. Dai Dat Day was located in the old Hong Kong Macau Pier, and there was no regulation at the time, and the hawkers then were not registered. And Dai Dat Day, to tie in with the reclamation project already was, had already suspended its operation in 1992. Well, we don't have very much time. I now declare that we extend the meeting by another 15 minutes. 4 members have indicated that they would like to speak. I may not be able to give you each 5 minutes. How about 4 minutes each? Madam Chair, why don't we deal with the motions first? Is there any objection that we deal with the members' motions first? None. All right. We have received 3 proposed motions. We don't have the copies yet. Okay, we can, project those motions onto the screen. Can the proponents of those motions walk us through those the details? I think that could be done very quickly. We'll start with Dr. K.K. Kwok, or rather Mr. Law Kun Chung. Will 1 minute do? Could you explain the content of your motion? Thank you. I move this motion because I want the government to recognize that Bazaars is part of our collective memory and it can help promote the community, the local economy. All along, the government had treated hawkers like, like a major problem. And this is entirely different from how the ordinary citizens look at hawkers. The role of the hawkers is not only to, add flavor, a local flavor to our economy. It can also allow those at the grassroots level to become self-reliant and actually plays a social welfare role. The government should therefore change its attitude and remove the stigma it has imposed on hawkers so that ordinary citizens can have another option and that they can also have the chance to become self-reliant. So members are now invited to vote on Mr. Law Kun Chung's motion. Is there any objection to this motion? Any abstention? If not, okay, let's deal with the motion now. All those members who are in favor of Mr. Law Kun Chung's motion, please put up your hands. It's unanimous. Let's now deal with the next motion. Any objection or abstention? I saw that it was unanimous. Let's move on to the next motion, which is moved by Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. Perhaps you can, take 1 minute to explain to us your motion. I think we should explore setting up a pedestrian prison as a pilot, in the 5 geographic constituencies to set up Lunar New Bazaars. The government has a long-standing policy on cooked food centers. The government is now taking back the short-term leases sites, so those centers are gone. Of course, there's a difference between a market and a bazaar. A bazaar means people would spontaneously congregate at the site. You don't know what it is, right? It just evolved spontaneously. It's different from Dai Bai Dongs. So I think we can give it a try. All our debate or controversies could be resolved in this pilot project. I hope the government can do this. So Mr. Leung's motion is slightly different from Mr. Law's. So one is that we should have a bazaar immediately after the Chinese New Year flower market, which is different from Mr. Leung's motion. Any objection to Mr. Leung's motion? None. So all those who are in favor of Mr. Leung's motion, please put up your hands. Okay. Anyone against Mr. Leung's motion? Mr. Yu Si-wing. Abstention? So so the motion is carried. Next, we move on to the next motion moved by Dr. K.K. Kwok. We may need to, expand it a little bit. Dr. Kwok, could you take a minute to tell us about the content of your motion? Madam Chair, we've all seen that Dr. Ko is not here. Only 2 junior officers are here to answer our questions. We asked them questions about Chinese New Year Bazaar. They were not able to give us an answer. By bottom-up it means that they will only listen to proposals from DAB and certain people. They will not listen to those people from the community. What happened last year, after the experience of last year, if the government insists on adopting this stringent policy against the local bazaars, nobody will forgive the CY Leung administration. I'm just saying on behalf of many different organizations that for the Chinese New Year that is coming, but the government doesn't have any plan yet. And the McPherson playground has been voted down. So I hope the government will be more lenient this time so that we can do it in the different districts. I hope that we will do it in all 18 districts. We should tell the administration that the bazaars belong to everyone in Hong Kong and not the government. Is there anyone who objects to Dr. Kwok's motion? None. All right, all those in favor then, please put up your hands. Please put down your hands now. Those against? Abstention? 2. I declare that the motion is carried. So all 3 motions have now been carried, and members may now ask their questions. You may put your question to the deputations or the officials. I believe we won't be able to give you 5 minutes each. So shall I say 4 minutes per member? Dr. Kwok. Thank you. I don't want to express an opinion. I just want to ask a question on your behalf. The government, well, we have floral markets in the 14 districts. Once they are closed, they should be immediately made available for the Kai Fongs to operate the bazaar. You said that there could not be a seamless transition. But how about, a break of few hours afterwards you allow them to operate the bazaar? Can you give an answer? And if it cannot be done, what is the reason? Technically, this cannot be done. After the flower market is closed, we need some time to clear the site. And if you want to convert it into a bazaar, you need different departments to look at the proposal to see whether or not it's feasible. At this stage, we don't have such information. So for the time being, I don't see this as feasible. Madam Wong, you still have more than a month. Could you tell me, let's say if I give you 1 week or 2 weeks or even 3 weeks to liaise with the different departments?
Well, this will be a direct response to their suggestions. You have the venues in 14 districts. There's no difficulty about that. To the residents and to the people patronizing the bazaars. How much time do you need? 2 weeks? 3 weeks? Be careful, don't lie. Ms. Wong. I haven't lied, but if I haven't got any information and then I abruptly say yes or no, I won't be honest. Apart from cleansing, it's also a question about the time that it can be made available. If it's the 4th day of the Chinese New Year, I believe people would be returning to work and the bazaar will not be feasible. So there are many conditions, many factors to consider. Apart from the location, we also have to consider departmental views. At this stage, I cannot give you an answer. Well, this is a waste of time. We know that the government is not sincere about this. Whatever proposed is always said to be not feasible. We all know that bazaars around the world, bazaars are not there for the local residents. It's a kind of a micro economic policy. This short-sighted government cannot give us answers since they have sent some technical officials here. We have carried 3 motions, clearly worded motions, although they have no legal effect. I hope you should bear in mind
that the community people have done what they can do. Would like to revitalize bazaars during the Chinese New Year. One further question. You said that in the individual districts you would enforce the laws in a relaxed manner. Please tell us, how are you going to respond to the motion which has been carried? How are you going to respond to the appeals and proposals from the relevant parties? Are you going to use force and clamp down on the operators, Johnny? Well, as I've said, we are going to be tolerant. The so-called relaxed manner is the term used by members and the deputations. As I've said, if it's about obstruction of passageway, then there would be verbal warning and dispersion. And if they use open frame, we would enforce the law and depending on the local circumstances. I've been consistent from the very start about this. Members, do we agree that we can extend the meeting by another 15 minutes? Some members have just arrived and they want to speak. We can manage if the meeting is extended by another 15 minutes. Mr. Yu Si-wing. Bazaars can enrich the environment for local people, and it's also good for tourism. But for different districts, different district councils will have to consider different factors such as safety and hygiene issues. Although the majority of people would support bazaars, but when it comes to local bazaars, they will have to consider local factors, because just like the housing supply, we all want more flats to be built, but when the government proposes to insert a pencil-like building on a vacant site in the district, people will have different ideas. So can the government consider long-term developments of bazaars for locations which are suitable for bazaars? Can licenses be granted for long-term bazaars? Can something else be done for Chinese New Year bazaars, such as licenses, and for people who are interested in selling goods or cooked food during the Chinese New Year? Maybe you should allow them to inform you, and you cannot allow an unlimited number of mobile stores to be set up. Maybe instead you can issue temporary licenses, and then some training should be provided. People may be skilled in cooking only, but they don't know what other factors should be considered, what things to watch out. They should be licensed and training should be provided. You have some criteria in your regulation, because some people break the law unintentionally. So you should do this on top of enforcement. Ms. Wong, can you take up a bigger role? But the crux of the matter is that we can find suitable locations. And whether a location is suitable, a lot would hinges on the views of local people and the district council. If there's a consensus on the Mr. Yu asks you to consider licenses? Well, yes, they are actually applying for licenses, PPE and a temporary food factory license. PPE is for public entertainment activities. The question is, there's no consensus at the moment on the location. We hope in the 5 geographical constituencies that there will be some permanent provision for bazaars, for small traders, small hawkers. We don't know what licenses you are talking about. Can you streamline the license application process? Well, it's not that complicated. Government departments are more than willing to facilitate the application. Maybe the assistant director can explain. There are actual examples of successful application where it's not that complicated to apply for a license. As Ms. Wong has said, when you have a location chosen, my department will liaise with the relevant government departments to look at the requests and the nature, and also how departments can tie in. I just don't see how this is a streamlined procedure. It's just that the answer is so abstract. To follow up on the answer given by Mr. Lam, we want to refer to some actual instances. For example, the Qingyi, they have this annual rich festival. People enjoy the cooked food happily. How much time would that take to get the licenses? After receiving the application, the applicant is not asked to contact different government departments. It will be a one-stop processing mechanism led by the FHD. The application will refer to relevant government departments, and when the departments request that some requirements be met, then we would relay the same to the applicant. So, what are the common reasons for an application to be rejected? Is the main stumbling block coming from your department? It's not that such applications are normally unsuccessful. Some applications involve the use of certain space which is already used by other people. For example, if they want to use the LCSD venue, but the same venue has been already booked by another party. Alright, you need to take care of venue, and then you need to apply for a number of licenses, and you have to deal with local objection. So it's fraught with the danger every step of the way. But the requirements are not onerous as you expect. They are not complicated requirements. Mainly the problem lies with the venue. For example, if you want to use the pavement, the departments will have to consider safety issues. That's understood. Thank you. Another question is about dawn markets. In Shan Shui, Sam Shui Po, Tin Shui Wai, there are dawn markets. There are people in Tongchong, old women who have set up a bazaar next to housing estates. What's the FHD's attitude towards such spontaneously set up bazaars? We know that there are dawn markets in some districts. If there's no environmental hygiene problem caused to the neighborhood and no nuisance caused to the residents, then the FHD will be flexible in enforcement. But there's a rider. If they're selling the improper food items, then to protect public health. Oh yes, you have already said that. We have actually looked into the statistics of enforcement on dawn markets in 2016 up to the 30th of November. The case number is not high. The FHD has a set of criteria. You said you are being tolerant. So you have some criteria to go by in handling complaints. Some complaints are just simply unjustified. For example, there's no strict obstruction in some of the cases. So are you going to be tolerant in those cases? Well, depending on the local actual circumstances. According to the local residents, the FHD people would claim that many people have lodged complaints, they have receiving numerous phone calls, and they have to be accountable. Therefore, they have to issue the penalty tickets. Actually, we have to look at the local circumstances. If the complaint is about obstruction, then we'll have people going there to see if really there is obstruction, and also whether the location is where we have a lot of pedestrians. For example, for dawn markets, we can see that the number of enforcement action is very low. You know, during the early morning hours, there is little pedestrian flow, and if they're selling clothes and not prohibited food items, normally we just issue verbal advice. Mr. Kwong Junyu, ultimately, in Hong Kong, there is no comprehensive hawker or bazaar. So the FHD would like to insist that enforcement must be done, and the deputation was also insist that we should treasure local bazaars. I thank all the deputations for coming to tell us what you think. It takes a lot of courage on your part to do so. Somehow we have lost this ambience of bazaars. That's why we need to have a comprehensive policy. It's a sort of a paradox. 2 weeks ago, I received a complaint from an old woman selling clothes in Tin Shui Wai, and she was surrounded by some people, and I liaised with the FHD over the case. The old woman used to have a store in Tin Sao Fair, so we can see how ridiculous this is. She was once a store operator in Tin Sao Fair, so it can be claimed that there was a policy on bazaars. But if we don't change the policy drastically by incorporating the local views, then bazaars are not genuine bazaars. We must listen to the voice of people. Well, in the mind of many people, that they had in the impression of the poor man's nightclub in the 50s and 60s. We're losing our local values, and this generation has a duty to safeguard such values. We should guard against the loss of our local culture. For example, in Subcommittee there's the cloth market. They have a life of their own, and they are now yelling to fight for their survival. But Madam Chair, I think this subcommittee should show a higher responsibility. Well, the discussion is difficult because we don't see Dr. Going Man there, and the government keeps saying that we have to enforce the law, we are being tolerant. But on the other hand, there are people saying that we should succeed a local cultural scene. I'm happy that there was an old woman who was very polite. She bowed and thanked us for listening to her. There's no need to be eloquent to make the point. We have somehow forgotten the need for Hong Kong people to have local bazaars. I hope that this subcommittee has to take up a bigger role. Don't let the discussion ends in nothing but empty talk. Let's work harder towards that objective. Do you need a response? No. Well, I think that members from different political persuasion all want you to do something about Chinese New Year Bazaar, and the deputations have given you lots of input. Don't tell us that you have an open mind. Well, your open mind so far has made things difficult for community organizations and operators. Mr. Siu Ka-jun, well, the deputations asked the two officials whether they had bought fish balls on the street, and they did not give any definite answers. I can tell you that I have. I want very, very much to buy from these street hawkers.
I have a number of questions. Number one, how is the government going to support the organizations who would like to set up bazaars? What information will you give them about open flame cooking, reheating, safety coefficient? What are they about? Please give us a written reply. Finally, Madam Chair, in February, we're going to hold another meeting, and we're going to invite the government officials to attend, and we're going to review the operations of bazaars in January. By then, you said that you try to be tolerating. I hope that in February, when we hold this meeting again, we can see what you mean by tolerating. Do you want a response from the government? Just explain what the safety coefficient is. Ms. Wong. We already said that we will give a written reply, and we're going to provide information in writing afterwards. As for community kitchens, well, without compromising public safety and food safety and integrity of the current system, we keep all options open. Any follow-up question? Should I or should I not follow up? You're just repeating the same answers. I really don't know what follow-up questions to ask. Citing the comment of Mr. Stephen Ho, this is just a transition. If you do not actively streamline the procedures, you won't get ahead. Don't tell us that it is not in line with our existing regulatory framework, etc. It's not working. Please, in your written reply, tell us how you will take active steps to streamline the procedures. Next, Mr. Pt2. Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Lau Siu Lai. Well, I understand that you have attached much importance to livelihood issues such as hawkers and bazaars, and that was shown in the election, your election manifesto, and this is good for the grassroots because we can have a diversity of retail outlets instead of shops and shopping malls. Tourists would like to visit places like Stanley where you can find commodities with local characteristics. In Shangwan, next to the pier, we used to have a bazaar. At that time, there were problems relating to environmental hygiene and other concerns, and the government then stepped in to regulate the bazaars. But then nowadays, when property prices are soaring, there are people who would like to start their business and who would like to buy their necessities more cheaply. So I think it would be good if we have bazaars again in Hong Kong. In fact, last week, I helped in preparing a motion. I also agree that we should have bazaars. The government should consider it carefully. But of course, there are always two sides of a coin, and even if I say we should tackle the mosquito problem, I'll be accused of killing the living. And in Mongkok, we see the loudspeakers blaring in the pedestrian zone, affecting the retailers nearby. So you need to consult the local community, the district councils, etc., to reduce conflict. Still, I think that this is a workable idea. And just now, somebody mentioned, dumplings from Wan Chai Pier, and I think that we can have something like that. Perhaps that you can sell handcrafts, accessories made by themselves, and we can set up bazaars to help these people who would like to be self-reliant. This is the second batch of deputations, and I was watching the webcast upstairs, and I thank deputations for coming. I think that for frontline officers, well, they bear the brunt as well. They are just doing their job, and from YouTube videos, I often see how they are scolded. If you want to reduce conflict with the public, you should not be too heavy-handed. Well, after introducing this piece of legislation, $1,500, for retailers, they dare not have shopfront extensions again, so please understand the plight of retailers. A brief response, please. As mentioned just now, and the member also understands that the views are divergent among stakeholders, and we can't get a consensus, but at the same time, we believe that we should keep up with the times. There is different there are different suggestions on the positioning of bazaars, maybe to promote tourism and to create jobs. We want to improve the present arrangement, in short. I think Mr. Shiu, I recall that he also supported my motion to create the bazaars. Well, regardless of the political, your political stance, I think your ideas are okay. We are running out of time. Mr. Eddie G would like to speak for the second round. Just 2 minutes. I don't need 2 minutes. Just want to confirm what outcome we have today. More specifically, say, if I want to set up a bazaar, I hope the administration can give us a paper setting out the steps to take, the licenses and permits to apply for, and the consultation process. I hope we can be given this summary in table format for our reference. Perhaps the details of the application can be included, such as cooked, a bazaar with cooked food stalls and a bazaar without. Please tell us the flow of procedure. All right, thank you. I hope the administration would give us written responses to the comments made by deputations and members. And please do not repeat your position. It's really vague. Well, I think the administration hasn't answered whether they're able to give us this paper. Right, please bear in mind the salient points. I think, in short, we need the site list, application procedure, criteria, whether there are different criteria, and whether you have a one-stop platform for applications. I hope you can respond to these points. And Mr. Eddie Ju asked about a list of sites. I think you can give this to us. We're going to give you an information paper. The list of sites must not be exhaustive because we rely on suggestions from local communities. We try our best to provide more information. But just now Ms. Ip mentioned that even if you don't have a list, you should tell us the criteria you adopt in selecting sites, and then what departments will be consulted. You can set them out in a table format. Yes, at least you can give us examples in different districts. That's why I said if we give us, if we give you an information paper, we can cite the examples to illustrate our criteria. But the things may be different for different districts. If that is the case, that would be top-down instead of bottom-up. Well, so can't the government provide support? No, already supplemented that for the information we have at hand, we can provide an information paper. I am disappointed. Of course, I am all for a bottom-up approach, but it doesn't mean that the government will provide no support, no information at all. How would the public know the availability of sites or the condition of sites if you do not do that? And this is, in fact, a top-down approach. I hope that in your information paper you can suggest some sites. Well, Madam Chair, if you get me, I already said that previous examples we cited. But if you want an exhaustive list of sites, I think we understand that it is impossible. Well, I'm not asking for that. Despite all the efforts made by organizations, you only could come up with some examples. Please give us more examples. Don't be perfunctory. Otherwise, we can't take the next step. We we have the support of the community. We're not asking. We're just asking you to work with us more proactively. I won't take up your time. Next item, AOB. Nothing on the AOB. So the meeting's adjourned. Thank you for attending.